It's been a while since we've done hot takes, so I knew it was about time. Let's get into the first one. The first hot take says, Shaq wouldn't dominate in today's NBA like a lot of people say he would. With mismatch hunting becoming more and more common, Shaq wouldn't be able to switch onto quicker guards without getting blown by. Also, Shaq lacked the ability to displace the floor and was a terrible free throw shooter, 53% for his career. So, I feel like you're picturing more of an out-of-shape, late-career Shaq, like Celtics or even Cavs Shaq when you say he wouldn't dominate. But if we're talking about Orlando Magic Shaq, that dude was crazy mobile for his size. He was running the floor and just moving way better than people give him credit for. That said, I totally agree that he wouldn't have the same switchability that a lot of modern bigs are developing. You're not going to throw him on the guards and expect him to hold up like a Bam Adebayo or Evan Mobley. And yeah, even in 2025, his free throw shooting would still be terrible because some things never change. But at the end of the day, sheer strength and size still matter. Shaq was just different when it came to that. Even in today's NBA, I think he'd still be a nightmare for most teams to deal with, even if he wouldn't be as plug and play as some modern bigs. Just don't discount his best attribute, which was his size, and he used that size to his advantage against guys like David Robinson, Hakeem, and Patrick Ewing. That's a strong list of bigs, but if he played today, he'd be going head to head with bigs like Jokic, Embiid, AD, maybe even throw a Giannis in there, and I still think Shaq could have his way. Now, I know I've sounded really pro Shaq in the modern era so far, but let me make something clear. Remember when Shaq was like, oh, people say I couldn't play today. Well, you're not paying attention. I am playing today. My name is Giannis. And basically, he was trying to say that he'd be like Giannis if he played today, and that's just a ridiculous thing to say. Shaq is no Giannis. At no point was Shaq as mobile as Giannis is. Giannis can handle the ball in the perimeter much better, and unlike Shaq, Giannis can switch under guards if need be. So let's stop pretending. Cut the act. Giannis is what Shaq could have been, not what he was. Even though I don't believe Shaq would be Giannis in today's modern NBA, he doesn't have to be at the same level to be dominant, so I'm going to disagree with the take and say Shaq would still be a dominant force. The next hot take says, if I had 4 years of a player at their peak to build around, I'd choose Dirk Nowitzki over Kevin Garnett. Dirk didn't need a super team to win a championship like Kevin Garnett. In fact, he was the first player to lead a team to a title without another player averaging 20 points per game in the finals. On the other hand, Kevin Garnett never averaged over 20 as a Boston Celtic and isn't half the shooter. I value Dirk's offense over Kevin Garnett's defense any day. So, I think this person clearly values the scoring of Dirk over the defensive anchor that KG was. But the thing is, I feel like this take makes it seem like KG couldn't score and was just a high-level defender, which isn't true. And the hot take is so hyper-focused that KG didn't average 20 as a Boston Celtic, but as a Timberwolf, when he was actually in his prime, he had several seasons over 20, even a 24-point-per-game season. Plus, Dirk isn't half the defender, but at the same time, I could see people saying the same thing about Garnett's offense compared to Dirk's. You know, as I'm thinking about it more, it depends how the structure of the team is. If you already have a bunch of defenders, it might not make sense to go after Garnett. Just go with Dirk and surround him with a bunch of lockdown defenders, and that's perfectly fine. It goes both ways. If the team already has a ton of offense, throw Garnett in the mix to hold it down in the paint defensively. So it can go either way. Just me personally, I'm picking Kevin Garnett solely because I like the idea of building a future around a two-way superstar. But that's just me personally, and so I'm going to have to disagree with that hot take. The next hot take says, judging past NBA eras using today's standards is both lazy and disrespectful to the game's history. If we say past eras are worse just because today's game is better, then by that logic, today's era will be seen as lacking when future generations come around. If half of the stars in the 80s had the same resources as the players today, they'd be far better. So, people always say judging past eras by today's standards is lazy, and I get that, but honestly, that's just what people say when they want to avoid the fact that the players from these older eras just don't compare to today's talent. It's a simple fact. They'll say it's disrespectful to not include those older players on top 10 lists just because they're not skilled, but I think it's actually disrespectful, even more disrespectful, to rank an older player higher than a better modern player despite them not being as skilled of a basketball player simply because they played before, so they just get the excuse that they were good for their era, even if their era wasn't the greatest. At the same time, I don't want these top 10 lists to only be about skill, or else it would just be modern players. It's fine to rank players based on how great they were in their time, but here's the problem. people start acting like someone like Jerry West would have been just as good or comparable to a Chris Paul if he played today, and that's just not true. Just because he's on some top 10 list because of what he did relative to his era doesn't mean he was actually a top 10 player skill-wise. It doesn't work like that. I don't even think many people I personally know still have Jerry West in their top 10, but the point still stands. So is it fair to penalize the more skilled players of today just because they play in a more skilled era and give credit to players who were less skilled but still rank high because of the time they played in? It's a tricky question, but for me, I just don't think so. And then the person who made the take also said that people like me shouldn't look down on the eras before this one because one day today's NBA will look not as good compared to the future NBA. And they thought that this was some sort of good point, but it's not, because I actually agree that the present NBA right now, it won't be as skilled as the future league. And when that happens, I might be the one complaining about how the new generation isn't as good. But if I say that, especially about skill, and I truly believe it, I'd be delusional. Lastly, the take tried to argue that if players like Jerry West, older players basically, had the same resources as today's players, they'd be way better. And I just don't know about that. I have nothing wrong with Jerry West. I actually respect him for what he did. But all of this stuff based on what ifs is kind of pointless. Would Jerry West, for instance, be better than Kyrie if he had Kyrie's resources? Nope, like why are we even talking about it? I just think that's a bit of a stretch. I can pull up old clips of him, and with all due respect, he wasn't as advanced as today's players. Sure, it was a different time, but when you see someone like Jerry West or anybody like that ranked above Kyrie on a list of top 10 point guards, it's okay if it's relative to his era, but if you actually think he was as good or better than Kyrie overall, you've got it wrong. But what do you think? What was your favorite hot take of the video? Tell me in the comment section below. Until next time, peace.